All right, now to this story we've been following. The Attorney General of Missouri is defending a new investigation of sex abuse within the Catholic Church, even though he'll have to rely on the cooperation of church leaders. Missouri is the first state to announce an investigation into clergy abuse since Pennsylvania released a scathing grand jury report last month. That report identified more than 300 abusive priests and more than 1,000 child victims over 7 decades. Nikki Battiste is here with the new push for investigations. Nikki, good morning.
Good morning. Top prosecutors in multiple states tell CBS News they're reviewing the Pennsylvania report and considering options for their own investigations. But different states have different laws over how far they can go. We visited Missouri, where some victims' advocates worry a new investigation won't have the teeth needed to get to the truth.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to tell my story.
They're meeting for the first time, but for decades, Michael Sandridge and Joe Eldridge shared a painful connection. For the two of you at your lowest point, what did that look like?
It looked like a rope around my neck and me sitting on the windowsill, ready to jump.
I'd be driving in a car and think, if I hit the bridge and I get killed that way, then I don't have to think about anything.
Sandridge says he couldn't think about the abuse he endured in the early 1970s, starting at the age of 10, when he says a priest molested him.
I'm crying the whole time, and he goes, "Why are you crying?" And I couldn't even answer. And he goes, "You have to stop that. Nothing happened. This is anything wrong. This is how special friends react."
Another priest, Monsignor Thomas O'Brien, allegedly helped facilitate the abuse by supplying alcohol and drugs. A decade later, Eldridge claims O'Brien was one of 3 priests who sexually abused him starting around the age of 9.
He had me perform oral sex on him and then threatened that if I ever told anyone, I would be kicked out of the church and that my parents would disown me, I'd lose my family, and that I'd go straight to hell.
The Diocese of Kansas City St. Joseph allegedly received multiple warnings over several years about troubling behavior by O'Brien, including a letter from a nun who reported his extremely heavy drinking. After an allegation of sexual misconduct with a minor in 1983, the diocese sent him to a residential treatment facility, but allowed him to return the following year to a limited ministerial assignment. The church finally removed him from ministry in 2002. He died 11 years later.
We're not going to pull our punches.
Missouri Attorney General Josh Hawley recently announced the first statewide investigation into clergy sex abuse since a Pennsylvania grand jury report identified hundreds of predator priests.
We have an obligation to the public to get all of the facts and to lay them out, and that is exactly what we are going to do.
Lawyer Rebecca Randles estimates there are thousands of victims across Missouri. She's skeptical of whether the Attorney General can conduct a thorough investigation. Is that enough?
No. And the reason it's not enough is because the investigation that's being looked at by the Attorney General doesn't have subpoena power.
Unlike the grand jury in Pennsylvania, Hawley's investigation won't be able to force the church to hand over its documents. Hawley says under Missouri state law, only local prosecutors can issue subpoenas or convene grand juries. So he's relying on assurances from church leaders like St. Louis Archbishop Robert Carlson.
Any files that they want to see will be available to them.
Can you really trust all the dioceses to turn over all of their documents to you?
Well, if they don't, then we'll make that fact known. You want to believe folks when they say they're going to cooperate, but you have to see.
What do you want the Missouri Attorney General to do?
Open up everything.
Michael Sandridge and Joe Eldridge settled lawsuits with the church in 2014. In an email to CBS News, the diocese says their specific claims were not officially investigated, but we do believe them to be victims of clerical sexual abuse.
It needs to be an honest investigation. If anybody's going to heal from this, if the church is going to heal, then they need to rip that Band-Aid off and open it up, clean that wound out for all to see. It'll be ugly, it's going to be nasty, but it needs to happen.
The Kansas City bishop has said he's happy to cooperate with the Attorney General's investigation. The diocese notes that today any priest would be immediately removed at the first credible allegation. And we actually called all 50 states, talked to all the attorneys general's offices. Many of them have called the Pennsylvania attorney general saying, how do we do this? How do we open an investigation? Because many of those states had priests from the Pennsylvania report pass through at one time.
It's so widespread and so sickening. The more you hear, the worse it gets.
Yeah, so this is going on. We're going to hear more.
This will continue.
We'll be talking to you again soon. Nikki, thanks.